lunch. Policy compliance, big headache for everyone. Bane of everyone's lives in mobility, I think. We have an amazing group of guests today to talk through some of the things each of you are doing in your worlds, lots of different perspectives. Just a kind of precursor to the whole topic itself, I was just looking at a few stats earlier. It's really interesting just to know how many different applications are going on day to day, year by year. So in 2024, just for e-visas alone, across the global market, it was over 1 billion spent just in terms of e-visas, expected to double by 2030, so just within 6 years. It's just about how much movement is going on in the world. From a visa agency service perspective, the spend globally estimated to be 3 to 4 billion in 2024, and it's expected to grow similarly to the e-visas. Now that's just e-visas alone, and there's a lot more to it. So the session today is really about understanding some of the policy compliance headaches that we all face day in, day out, from a kind of the compliance side, but also from a policy side as well, of course, and how that interacts across all of our different services. So I think you've all seen, hopefully, I am Beverly King. I'm VP of Client Partnerships here at AltoVita, and I'll allow my panel to introduce themselves and we'll get into the topic.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Oghene. I'm the CEO of the Cozm. We are a technology company that handles compliance for global mobility and business travel.
And I'm Soren Sturup-Toft. I'm the lead immigration and mobility for APAC and EMEA at Databricks, which is an AI and data storage company.
Hi everyone, and I'm Sigrid Nauwelaerts. I recently changed roles, so I'm now in the insurance industry with RSA. But before 10 years with Johnson & Johnson as the EMEA head of mobility, and then I moved to Kenvue, which is the spin-off from Johnson & Johnson of the consumer products, where I was the head of mobility for 2 years. So switching my focus a little bit from mobility to reward, but I think I still have some good experience and knowledge from mobility.
And this is where compliance within the reward
Sure.
space is even more interesting.
Okay, yeah.
So we are going to start off with talking about challenges, so policy challenges and pain points. So I will ask our panel, which aspects of compliance cause the most frustration for travellers and why? Now there's a lot of different frustrations. Soren, I'm going to come to you first, and I know you've got a lot of experience in this area.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is timing, it's applications being delayed, it's maybe not having technology to sort of augment your application flows. So it may be manual, it may be paper-based, and depending on which jurisdiction you're going into, there may be a lack of knowledge, depending on if your vendors are not linked up as well. So I think timing and you know, headaches with actually getting everything in the right place is a big one.
Indeed. And Sigrid, from your side?
Yeah, I fully agree. I think there's another element today in our geopolitical environment, which is also uncertainty. Because people might have been pretty easy to go to specific countries with specific nationalities, and it can become a bit more challenging today. So immigration for sure, which then also translates to the family, right? If my immigration is delayed, will my kids be able to go or to start to school fast enough? So I don't know if I really want to go, if I want to go now. And I think immigration is key, plus of course the speed also, and being known that we're sending John or Mary to that country. I think in mobility, we've always asked our business partners, please involve us as soon as possible. And that's a bit of an ongoing battle, but it's so important right now to deal also with the compliance piece.
Exactly, and if there's a knock-on effect on the immigration side, it has a knock-on effect, of course, to all of the other services, whether that's on a mobility side or on a business travel side as well. Yeah, you talked about, when we were talking in advance of this session, you were talking about the anxiety, right, for the employees, and the well-being is such a critical thing. So, Ben, talk us through a real-world example that you worked with a client. I think we've got it up on the stage, so maybe you can give us an example of
Yes,
where some
sure.
of these headaches can be solved and resolved.
Yes, sure. I don't know if many of you know what the EU Posted Workers Directive is. A few people, okay. A couple of years ago, no one knew this. And just by way of background, I'm a computer scientist that's tax qualified, so I only write code and read legislation. So don't invite me to any parties. Okay? So Cisco, they had a project in the Paris Olympics last summer, and they got a letter from the Olympics committees telling them that they needed to file these SIPCs, they're called. This is the French Postal Workers Directive, for everyone going into Paris, and they need to file a C or C or an A1 from every home country. Now, they just assume that compliance means immigration, business visas, work permits, and they never heard of all these other things. So they spoke to their normal service provider. It's a big four firm that starts with an E and ends with a Y. And they were told that it will take a minimum of 6 weeks to file these applications, and the best price they could get is £600 per application. So obviously they couldn't do that because they had 2 weeks to have their people on the ground. So we leverage a combination of different types of automations to file those applications, not in 6 weeks, but in 60 seconds or less for each application. And for around about 20% of the fees, it would have been if it was delivered through humans. So it's just an idea of the impact of these types of technologies that are emerging in our industry. It's not necessarily an advert for the Cozm, but just generally how cost of these services are going to drop dramatically over time, and the speed is going to increase. The next project that Cisco had was in Croatia, and they were losing up to €1 million a day for not having their people on the ground in Croatia, because their Croatian client told them they couldn't arrive without having all the paperwork in place. So this was one of our early clients, and then we started doing similar things with Adidas and other companies. The final thing I will say on that is we partner with other service providers. So in the case of Adidas, it was with CIBT visas, but I think partnerships are going to become more important as time goes on.
Indeed, and obviously we spoke about that in the session earlier around kind of creating these ecosystems where these things often have a knock-on effect, as we said. If something happens within the immigration side or the compliance side, it then has an impact on everything else in the chain, and the whole chain falls down. Quick question on business travel compliance and global mobility, because there's a lot of intersection and kind of conjoining, I guess, or opportunities to bring the two together, yet many don't do this. Soren, Sigrid, maybe you can share if those are brought together within your organizations, or are they kept very separate? Because there's a lot of crossover of knowledge, of experience, of process.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, thanks. So how it is today at my company, it's very separate, but we're also size-wise much smaller than the J&Js or the Kenvues. But for J&J, I was talking to a former colleague there who is also managing the business travel program. And I think if I'm right, it was in 22, Mobility started some risk assessment about business travel. And that was really the start of building the business case, like, okay, look, there's a lot of compliance, we need to do something, who can own it, who will provide the budget, etc. So I don't know where we are with that today, but I agree with that, and no one really wants to do that, especially not with the same people. If you have more resources, maybe that's a possibility, or a different technology, also a possibility. But I think personally, it makes sense to combine those two.
Yeah. From a compliance perspective and then a cost perspective,
And a cost
then
perspective.
that frees up costs for other things.
Yeah, and aligning also your vendors, etc. I think that definitely makes sense. So more to come for RSA. Huh?
So we are split as well. So it's handled by travel and expenses, which is suboptimal. I think compliance-wise, I don't think they're quite on the money in terms of the knowledge. So therefore, I think we are currently in the process of actually looking at the compliance risk, doing analysis on the actual on the historical data that's been happening. We've had quite a few business travelers, and again, hoping that we'll be able to leverage a combination of AI and vendor sort of ecosystems to be able to deliver this better. And I think so to throw in the posted workers, maybe using AI to generate business letters, all these things, which is now happening sort of in a semi-automated fashion, but it can certainly be better as well. And I think maybe with the right resources, I think we can maybe make a success of it. But again, you can't do it with the same people, and this is the sort of thing. No one wants to sign up for it, because then if you need to prove first that you need the more people, and then the team gets disenfranchised and sort of upset and leaves if they, so there's always that sort of balance. But I think it's, on a compliance basis, it makes sense that it's in the mobility space.
Right, indeed. And I think this is where the tools and the platforms can help, right? To bring the two together, but not necessarily deviate from your day-to-day roles, but actually have some insight into each other's worlds. So, how well do we feel that current tools and platforms are supporting your policy enforcement? So, you know, whether that is on the immigration side, the tax side, the temporary housing, whatever it is, you know, are they helping or hindering what you're doing on a day-to-day? So maybe Soren, I'll stick with you for now.
Yeah, we definitely take advantage of the platforms that we do have. We still want to add more. We are looking at mobility platforms as well. We're looking at different vendors maybe for Relo, which could help augment this. But like having come from other organizations where we've been working off spreadsheets, you know, there's no sort of comparison in terms of being able to actually get the analytics and actually being sure that you are running a compliant ship. And I think the only way to do that is through technology now. You know, it doesn't need much scale for it to sort of run out of road to use spreadsheets.
And that data is helping you and your team to make better decisions.
Absolutely. Forecasting, making better decisions, and also prove to the business that they like that this is what we need like money for as well. So they're all engineers. So they need vast amounts of data to be able to make decisions. So yeah, the more data we have, the better, the more we can sort of underpin our decisions.
If I could have one of those 100% emojis over my head right now, I would. Ben, I'm going to come to you before I go to Sigrid. So in terms of policies, you know, what can you say in terms of the tools that are out there and how they are supporting policy enforcement from your perspective?
So this may not be great news, but government authorities are also using data. And so you may have heard of the ETA. The European version of that is called the ETIAS. And the reason why it's taking longer to publish is because they're connecting immigration with tax, employment law, and social security. So if you don't have a good handle of your travelers and your mobile employees, you may find that the authorities might have more of a handle. And we typically think of government authorities as being slow in this area, but actually technology is moving in a way that's making it much easier to build technology. There was a few weeks ago, I was having a meeting with Soren and showing him something else. We're building something else around agentic workforces. And he described a data problem that he had. And it took probably minutes to sort of reconfigure what we're building to show him a very first proof of concept. So when I was listening to Nicole talk about the collaboration with AltoVita, I thought this is just going to happen across the board. Both government agencies and service providers are going to be building technologies much faster based on data. So that's the bad news, okay? The good news. The good news is that I think it also means that accessing technology to deal with these things will be much easier and the cost will drop over time. So I think it's a bit of a mixed bag at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the governments have always been slow to catch up, but finally we've got this period where it's all speeding up again, even on that side. But yeah, like you say, the cost coming down is definitely a big focus for everyone. And then Sigrid, from your side, what role does data play in improving compliance? And how do you ensure that that's being used effectively? And especially now your reward is overarching across reward. You've got a bigger view of things, I'm sure. But you know, what are you using data for from a compliance perspective?
So yeah, data are super important, but I think different companies are also at different stages in the journey. So the company where I am now, in only 2.5 weeks, it's still very basic. So I think there's a lot of improvements that can be done. But I also think there's also relation with the company culture and the change in the how you communicate change in the company. And last week I was attending a mobility event in Belgium, and you clearly see, and maybe it's not the right word, right? But the J&J and the Kenvues, they're like traditional mobility programs, and then you have more the tech companies who completely started differently. And there's a lot more on the data and the decision making and the policy enforcement, because people always have known that the last 2-3 years. Whereas you have, and not speaking on the J&Js or even my previous employer, he's like, okay, so that's the data, but now the real work starts. Now I'm going to talk to you, and you're going to allow me exceptions, and you're going to allow me different things, etc. So it's also a change and a culture change, that needs to happen, where you can make sure that, yes, these are the data, and the data tell the story, etc. And that doesn't happen in a year. You need also leaders to support you and to guide you through that. So I think that's where some companies probably still struggle a bit.
I think as well, the data can help you to have those discussions. So it might be that there's not always the need to be completely rigid. So let's say a length of stay is 30 days. There's other data that's presenting to say, there's a lack of permanent accommodation, so that 30 days is not going to be sufficient in this specific location. Or indeed, there's been some delays from something in the process. So, this is where the data can come in and help to drive some of those decisions and some of those, I wouldn't say exceptions, but deviations from policy. And a quick follow-up question from me on kind of the capabilities. We've got CSRD coming up, also which our EcoStats is answering to, but also the transparency on our vetting. But I guess, from your perspective, what are your thoughts around the capabilities and the need to have these reporting opportunities for these kind of new compliance regulations coming in?
Yeah, again, I think it's super important, but I think it requires a lot of pre-work, also alignment across countries or across regions. And again, it also depends, like, where is your footprint, and probably in some areas of companies, it's a bit easier to make it global or regional. Again, maybe I don't know it yet, but in the insurance sector, only being there 2 weeks, it's like, oh, but we can't do that. This is very country specific. This is here and there. So I'm kind of, let me challenge that, but I don't know yet enough about it. So again, I think the industry sector might be a bit easier with some than with others. But again, if you have the technology and the tools to navigate policy differences, etc., it should help us. It should free up people, whether it's through AI or whatever. It should help free up your teams to focus on really the things that matter, and some of the more recurring work to be managed by the technology.
Thanks for that. There's just for those who didn't catch it, we have a reminder of our webinar that was last month, which was hosted by our very own Jess Dunderdale, together with Jamie Finney of Ness Faircroft, who's head of travel, focusing on global policies and local nuances. So if you didn't catch it, you can rewatch the reminder there. I'm going to talk a little bit about. Sorry, I was supposed to skip to that one. So the next one, AI and automation. So in terms of AI and automation, where are we seeing some real impact coming through? I'm going to come to Soren first, because it sounds like you're doing some very exciting work to help streamline and to help facilitate your policy compliance within Databricks.
Yeah, so being an AI company, it does help as well, because it does mean that the leadership are very bought in up front. So if you mention the word AI, there's we should certainly do this. So like when we started partnering with the Cozm, they're like, oh, this sounds like a good idea, because we can actually try and showcase and be sort of a front runner in the industry in this space. But also we are actually starting to adopt Databricks within mobility and HR. So actually using
Using your
data
own
lakes,
products.
yes, which makes
Great,
sense.
which you should be doing.
Yeah, it sort of makes sense, but they haven't wanted to do it beforehand because I don't think the data was good enough, and apparently they were concerned about sort of giving engineers to the in-house teams. But now it makes sense to.
The focus on the outside client, not the internal,
Yeah.
which is often the way.
But now, like, this will be sort of our rocket fuel is sort of the idea, and sort of we are looking through everything with an AI lens. So everything that we're doing, we should be seeing whether we can use some kind of AI tool to make it better or faster or augment it, but very much with the human at the center to be the sort of like, so if we get large data sets, then we'll sort of at the outset try and see whether we can make sense of it using AI and sort of take it from there, building policies, these kind of things, drafting a lot of things like that has been very useful. So we have access to a range of different platforms on the pro version. So it's been interesting to learn better prompting and all that. So yeah.
And then obviously, Sigrid, from your side, a smaller organisation where you're coming in, more tricky to embrace some of these tools, but there are some things you're considering?
Oh, I think one thing that came to mind when you were talking is like at CamView, there's a lot of internal colleagues who are working on these type of things, but in their area of expertise, right? So I think there's a lot of value to understand what are your, whatever, AI or tech teams or whoever you call them in your company, what are they doing? But where I stumped a bit is like, or where we got a bit blocked, like, oh, yeah, we can help you, but you know, our year is already full. So the earliest we can help you is in 27 or something, right? So I think it made me also think like, oh yeah, but yeah, you have to look within your company who are, because there are so many different people that have so many different strengths, but be upfront and try to involve them as soon as possible, because often there's a lot of learning and tech and whatever in your company, and of course you can go outside too, but I think that's also an important piece to remember.
Yeah, definitely. It's a mindset change, right? So kind of, we're always going through change, but it's embracing a new type of change. It's understanding and locking in some of the expertise and the knowledge within the organisation in other areas that you can bring in. And Ben, your perspective in terms of outsourcing, because we talked about outsourcing tasks, you know, typical outsourcing might be changing over time. What's your view?
Yeah, I think so. So I learned a lot from conversations with like Sigrid and Soren and Hadija on what's actually happening in-house on a day-to-day basis. And one of the things that worries me a little bit is when companies are looking to outsource something to a shared service center. Because if you could define a process so well to hand over to a shared service center, then yeah, I think it's a bit worrying for where we're headed. But in general, I also think that a lot of companies are now thinking more about talent mobility. And the head of mobility at Generali told me this, and I hadn't realized this before. In your types of careers, no one actually gets to a very senior position, but just by doing operations really well. They actually get there by doing the strategic work really well. So the first half of the problem is automating all the things that's taking the time away from that. But actually, the second half of the problem is even more important. It's the stuff that Soren has been speaking about. Is leveraging data to sort of take more strategic decisions. And that's what actually accelerates careers in-house. So I think that's one of the most important lessons I've learned recently around what companies are doing that are going to sort of a traditional outsourcing model versus those that are taking control of this and making their careers more future-proof.
I think that's going to answer my next question of, will there be a role for humans going forwards with the technology, right? So they're doing the more strategic part instead of the transactional, the administration part, in your view?
So at the Cozm, when we talk about AI, we don't mean artificial intelligence, we mean augmented intelligence. I'll tell you a very quick story. I was seconded to Unilever I thought I was going to Jamaica. Anyway, and I ended up in Surrey, and there was this program. It was called the Futures Leaders Program, where they replaced the first round interviews with AI interviews, and the second was still run by human. In 12 months, gender diversity improved by 14%, and recruitment costs dropped by £1 million. So I think this augmentation of human and digital intelligence is going to be much more powerful than one versus the other. So I don't think it's this debate of is AI going to take over human jobs? I don't think that's the right debate. I think it's how can we amplify those human skills and remove risks like human bias.
So talking about risks, I'm going to preview. Do you want to speak? I've got your video, Ben, on your process and how you kind of carry out an example process from an AI automated perspective. Do you want to talk it through and I'll get it going?
Of course. So I think this is an example of what I touched on earlier on. So you will see some of our automations working here. On the right side of my screen, this is a SIPC. It's what you need to file if you have people going into France. And on the left side of my screen, you have an agent that is working together with traditional automation to file an A1 in the UK. This is a international source security certificate. Both of these happen simultaneously. This has actually been slowed down to be visible to the human eye. And the reason why this is done this way is to cut the cost and increase the speed. There's also predictive analytics, which is hard for humans to do. So predict whether or not these applications are going to be rejected or going to cause an audit. And that's very, very hard for humans to do. So it's just one of many examples of where our work is transforming and freeing up those humans to spend more time with each other.
Indeed. Thank you. Well, we were going to have Q&A, but I think we are a little bit over time. So if anyone has any questions, please come and see any of us after the session. We're about to break for lunch, so definitely come and ask any of our team here today. Thank you very much to the panel. I think lots of great perspectives. My takeaways from this is it's all about working smarter and not harder. It's a cliche, I know, but just how we are doing in AltoVita, I think it's embracing AI and technology in many different ways, and not just thinking in one area, but thinking in every sort of touch point, whether that's back office, front-facing experience with the employee, leveraging different tools, embracing what else is going on within the organization and learning from that. And then overall, your term that we talked about in the planning, Sigrid, is kind of sticking in my mind, the mindset change, being agile, and also knowing that there's still going to always be complexity, but if we're embracing and we're agile to change, we're embracing the tools, we're going to create the business case to continue to grow and evolve in this area. So thank you very much. Hopefully some of those headaches are going to go away and we can all have an easier life.
Thank you.
Thank you.